So our guest today is Mike Drucker. We are here today to talk about the book that changed his life, Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata.
Yep. There's always this pressure to be a certain way, which I know we all talk about, but being a certain way isn't just being rich and successful. It's, well, you're supposed to get married and have kids. But if you don't do that, you're supposed to get married and have a good life. And if you don't do that, you're supposed to be single, but like living big. But if you don't do that, like you have to have these markers for people to consider you normal or to not consider you being held behind.
Do you think that tension and that expectation from society is the cause of a lot of unhappiness and anxiety currently? Books. They've saved us from the dark, set our souls on fire, and whispered truths we couldn't ignore. I'm Chris Collins, and this is Books That Changed My Life.
In this book, she feels like she has to pretend to be this normal person, but the only time she feels like a human being is when she's working in this convenience store.
The big question, how did Convenience Store Woman change your life? Oh, is that your copy?
This is well, technically for this podcast, I rebought a copy to mark up because I realized an ex I had lent it to, we'd broken up and she had it. But I was like, you know what? I want to be able to mark it up again. So I just bought a new copy and reread it.
How long has she been your ex?
4 years?
What else did she steal from you?
Honestly, that might be the only book. It was less of a steal and more like she was borrowing it when we broke up.
And didn't.
And I'm someone who's, unless it's like a load-bearing item in my life, I'll be like, that's the payment of breaking up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I got a new copy.
Can I see your style of how you like?
Oh, it's completely chaotic. It's the same since grad school, which is just nonsense.
Okay, but you write in it like I write in it.
Yeah.
Like that. I like that. I mean, it's always fun to look at how other people do it. There's so many people that don't highlight or write at all. And I'm always like,
yeah,
I don't get it. Like I want to.
Like sometimes if a book is really nice, I'll like photograph parts of it. If I'm like, I don't want to. Because like sometimes I have an old copy of English as She Has Spoke by, do you know that book?
Mm-mm.
So there was this early book that you could say was like an 1800s version of going viral. And it's called English as She Has Spoke or As She Has Spoken. But what happened was this Portuguese translator wanted to make a Portuguese to English dictionary for travelers. He didn't know English. So he didn't know any other language. So he got a French dictionary. So he went Portuguese to French and then French to English and released it. And it literally became like the equivalent of like, remember in the early 2000s, there'd be bad translations and people would go crazy for them like that. But it became a hit book. And Mark Twain wrote an introduction to the reprint of it that called it like his favorite thing ever and said it was absolutely perfect. So, but I have an old copy of that from the 1800s and I've like taken photos of passages, but I will never write it.
That's so funny. So our guest today is Mike Drucker. He is an Emmy-nominated writer, producer, and stand-up comedian. He named the famous Zelda character Groose.
That's right.
And from what I've heard, he was killed by the Terminator.
That's right.
And most recently, he wrote Good Game, No Rematch. But we are here today to talk about the book that changed his life, which is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata.
Yep.
Here's the book that changed my life. It is the May 1993 Braille issue of Playboy.
Is this from Robin Hood Men in Tights? Or is this the...
No, that's
the actual one. There was a gag in Robin Hood Men in Tights where there was a Braille Playboy. I didn't know that they made actual Playboys.
No, Braille. They really did.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Can you tell me anything about the centerfold? Can you close your eyes and see if you can? What do you think? Like what? Blonde, brunette? What?
Had a successful life after this. Ended up very happy.
Married a comedian.
Fulfilled. Nothing went wrong after, and the rest of her life, she was glad she did this.
Still waiting to give back the Convenience Store Woman to her ex.
Yeah. She can keep it. It's fine.
It's all yours. It's so funny. So what do you think of the library?
This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It is so beautiful. It almost makes me angry at you. Like, it's so nice that I'm like it's almost like I want to be like, hey, look over there and just like break into things and take stuff. It's like and I mean this as a compliment, what a child thinks a supervillain's library would look like.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I pinched myself. Like,
This is
for
crazy.
the longest time, I just had stacks everywhere,
Yeah.
boxes of books.
Yeah.
And when I finally got to put it somewhere,
Oh man.
and actually kind of have it in categories, and then it's not that old. Oh, I know I have that book, but where is it? And you're going through boxes. And,
Yeah. Oh, I have that all the time.
even at home right now, though, I have stacks that I need to bring here because I just love books.
No, I get you, man.
I really want to add to certain parts of the library now, since like I kind of understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But I really one thing I want to add more of is architecture.
Oh, you should. I know
working
nothing
on
about
that.
it, but you should.
Well, we're really glad you're here. The fun thing about this is that you get to hear about books that have a huge following, but you just never heard of. And I think just about everybody here is reading this.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have heard of it. And I think even Ryan, who helps us here, is reading her other book.
Yeah.
From reading this one. So
yeah, she just had a
kinda
new one
fun.
come out called I think it's called The Vanishing World. Well, technically it came out in 2015, but the English translation of it just came out a few weeks ago.
it's great.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. You're inspiring us to
Thank you.
discover stuff we haven't discovered before.
I love that, and I love this author.
Kind of tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
So I grew up in South Florida, probably about an hour north of Miami, and I was just always a super bookish kid. Weirdly, my dad's not, I would say, a big reader, but he was a bookish kid, so he kind of passed that along to me as a kid, and it just stuck with me. So, like, he was a huge H.G. Wells fan. He was a huge Jules Verne fan. He would give me his childhood copies of these books, and I would just dig into them. And I still have a laminated book I made in kindergarten that is War of the Worlds 2, which is just like an 8-page retelling of the same story. But of course, I called it a sequel. So, like, even like when I was a little kid, I would read these books and I would just like have these flashes of wanting to be a part of it, wanting to participate in it, wanting to add to it. And so they've just always been this giant part of it. Plus, in Florida, the sun is bad, and I was not a child who liked going outside.
You just burn like a tomato.
Just burn like a tomato all the time.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
funny. So was your mom into books?
She was. My mom was very into books.
Always fiction?
She actually was a little more into nonfiction. She liked reading like biographies of people, like celebrities. She was also someone who read the newspaper every day. So even when she wasn't reading a book, she was constantly reading. Like, she was constantly reading National Geographic, every magazine she could get her hands on, every newspaper. She grew up reading comic books. She was actually a big comic collector when she was a kid.
Your mom?
Yep.
That's like the dream. That's like the dream mom for somebody.
Yeah. So both parents were super supportive of.
Thanks, Michael. Will you throw that up there for me?
Yeah. Both parents were super
Cheers.
supportive of reading. Cheers. And I mentioned this in my book, and we can talk about it. But my parents realized my family didn't have a lot of money growing up, and we had a local Barnes and Noble. And my parents realized that when they were both working late and my sister couldn't babysit, they could just dump me in that Barnes and Noble for like 6 or 7 hours. And that was, back when they had chairs and music, so you could really just like settle down. And so I would spend on a Saturday or Sunday 6 or 7 hours at a Barnes and Noble and just read things. So I was always surrounded by books in some way.
Anybody ever try to kidnap you from the Barnes and Noble?
No, but I did have employees ask me if I was okay. Like, plenty of employees would be like, "You have been here a long time, little boy." And I'd be like, "I'm waiting for my mom."
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so at what point in your life did this book come into the picture? How old were you?
I'm not very long ago. Probably, I'm 41 now. It's probably 34, 35 when I found it. I just happened to be, I was in Manhattan. I forget what indie bookstore, but I just walked into an indie bookstore, probably killing a half hour before I did a stand-up show or something.
The greatest
Yeah.
in Manhattan.
You're like, I'm gonna kill 30 minutes and then walk out with 8 books.
Is New York your favorite city?
Seattle's my favorite city. I lived in Seattle when I worked at Nintendo, but New York is a very, very close second for me.
Back when they owned the Mariners?
Back when they owned the Mariners, and you could for free.
I'm from Seattle.
Oh, I loved it. I loved Seattle
Did
so
you
much.
become a Seahawks fan?
No, but I'm not a big sports fan in general. Although I
But if
do
you
like
had
hockey.
to have a team, would you say the Seahawks?
If I had to have a team, actually, I'd say the Seahawks. Because I know too many jerks that like the Miami Dolphins. I have too many relatives that I'm happy when the Dolphins lose.
Yeah. Poor Dolphins.
Oh, yeah, never. But, fun team to grow up with in the 80s with Dan
How
Marino.
long did you live there?
I lived there till I was 18, and then I went to NYU for English Lit, and then I stuck around an extra year, and I got my master's degree in English Lit.
So you were the guy that helped me on my English homework.
Yeah. Well, my high school was actually really fun, and so and this is probably not ethical, but I would be friends with the athletes, and I would get paid $50 a pop to help them polish up their college essays. And it wasn't like a bully thing. It wasn't like, hey, nerd, you're going to do this. It was like, I will give you $50 if you can make this make sense for the University of Florida.
No, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so you're in New York.
Yeah.
You're you go into a bookstore, and then what about this? Is it the only book you bought that day, or did you buy a few, do you think?
I definitely bought a few. This is the only one I could tell you off the top of my head I bought, because I'm one of those people that will walk out with like a stack and then be like, where did I even get all these? But I think it was one, it's such a small, like book in size, and it has such a bright color that it grabs your attention. And because it's small, you're like, well, pick it up and read a few pages, because it's not going to be a big effort. And then I must have read 10 or 20 pages just standing there in the store, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get this. I have no choice but to buy this book. And it was one of those things where I thought it was going to be like, sometimes in that stack of 8 books where you never read it, it's just a cool looking book or something. And I blew through it, and I like forced people to read it. It was so good, and I just hadn't read something like that before.
How many copies have you given away?
As probably, I want to say maybe 15, 16, Christmas gifts.
That's a great
birthday
book.
Gifts. Yeah. Usually to people who'd get it, because it is a specific book with a specific tone. So, you want to make sure that the right person reads it.
Okay, so kind of tell me the premise. Like, what is the premise of the book?
So the premise of the book is there is a woman who works in a convenience store, and she's 35, and she's worked there for 18 years. And her family and friends are starting to get worried that she's, wasting her life away. She's not married yet. And this all takes place in Japan, in which these are heavy issues of like, women are often, having worked at a Japanese company, I know sometimes women in Japan, if you're not married by a certain age, you're kind of mistreated, you're kind of dismissed. Like, we have that in our culture, but in this book, it's a very big part of it, where she feels like she has to pretend to be this normal person. But the only time she feels like a human being is when she's working in this convenience store. And all the other employees don't really care about it, and the people think it's dumb she works there. But to her, that one place is where she feels like a human being. And there was just something that I really understood about that. That feeling of, oh, this weird thing that makes me abnormal is actually the only thing that makes me feel normal internally.
Which is what?
I think for me, just like, I don't know, not just video games, but sort of like this sense of everything being play, like a very play-oriented person. When you're someone who's very into video games, I think you get a lot of the cliches that, you have, you're not paying attention to things, you don't care about literature, you don't care about art, you're just much more for shooting guns at stuff. And for me, it's like, sort of like what I was saying with War of the Worlds. It's like a place where I can exist and my imagination can kick off, and I can feel like, oh, there's a set of rules in this game. There's something I can follow that makes me feel like I understand what I'm doing, versus trying to parse human interaction at times, which can be difficult if you're very awkward.
Yeah. And so also, like, for her working in the convenience store, it's kind of in a way kind of humanizing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of like boiling it down to the simple human experience.
Exactly.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a common experience. And it's also like, so many people have, their first summer job that might be retail, or like, a quick job that's just between other jobs and you don't care about it. And that's also humanizing. So it's interesting to see like the people who are like, this is just a part-time job. Why is this a big deal to you? And someone who's like, this world, this convenience store is the world I understand. Like the fact that she dreams in the convenience store, like dreams of the convenience store. The fact that, to her, when she walks by another convenience store, it's almost like she's tempted to just go inside and fix things up. I don't know, it's so interesting to me, and it made me feel seen in a weird way.
Yeah, it's a great premise. So on the flip side of that, what do you think that says about society?
I mean, I think that there's this there's always this pressure to be a certain way, which I know we all talk about, but being a certain way isn't just being rich and successful. It's, well, you're supposed to get married and have kids. But if you don't do that, you're supposed to get married and have a good life. And if you don't do that, you're supposed to be single, but like living big. But if you don't do that, like you have to have these markers for people to consider you normal or to not consider you being held behind. And that's another thing that, I experience with my love of games is they're often like this thing where it's like, isn't that for kids? Or like, you're still into that. And it's like, no, this is an art form that brings me immense pleasure. But at the same time, there's this weird, almost like an impermeable barrier between people who understand why that might be fulfilling and people who think that it's very strange and immature for you to still be fulfilled by that.
I know this is deep, but I'm just curious, like your thoughts. Like, do you think that tension and that expectation from society is the cause of a lot of unhappiness and anxiety currently?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think that we're all being told in different directions what we should want. You should want to have a big family, but also you should want to have a lot of money. You should grind as hard as you can to get like the best job, but also your job's not your life. You should live your life. You should be true to yourself. But remember, you can't always, it's all of these contradictions. And I feel like, almost like a computer freezing. There's certain times that me as a person, I think other people just sort of go like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, I wish there was a set of instructions you could just give me that I could just follow.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard.
This is great, by the way. This coffee drink.
So from Seattle.
Yep.
So are you familiar with any of the coffee companies in Seattle?
I'm familiar with a couple of them, but
Vivace?
No.
So Vivace's the one on Capitol Hill that's famous. He never sold.
Okay.
And there's always like a line. It was just for a long time. It was just like a kiosk on Broadway in Capitol Hill.
I must have missed that.
And he roasts his own and like never sold out. Well, you can order it and he'll ship it like every couple of weeks. He roasts, and so I gotta
do that.
This is Seattle's.
That is delicious.
Vivace.
That is very good.
Yeah, it's special, right? You can tell he gives a shit.
You really can.
He's like, there's a craft to it. So what kind of happens in the book with her? What's the journey?
So a new guy starts working at this convenience store who's almost her mirror reflection. He's immediately dismissive of the job. He's like, this is pointless. We're only doing this job because we're told we're supposed to. He doesn't have a home because he wouldn't pay his rent. So he's like sort of on the run from his roommates who are trying to collect money from him. And his family has lent him money. And it's this mirror image of someone who refuses to participate because they also feel like they don't fit into this machine. But unlike this woman who goes, I have found my spot where these are the rules that I understand that make me, this guy has instead rejected all of it at once. And so this guy totally throws her off, but she also sees an opportunity to solve both of their problems because he's being judged for not being in a relationship and not being married and not having a proper career, and she's being judged for that. And so she proposes not a marriage of convenience, but a relationship of convenience in which they can both seem like normal human beings to other people. But the problem is they also don't really like each other. And it's not a romance so much as it is two people who just are trying to figure out how to navigate a world that's not made for them, seeing if they can team up to trick everyone else to leave them alone.
Is there sort of an element where one is trying to fix the other, like they think they can fix each other?
It's, it's almost like I think that they think they can fix each other, but they think they can fix each other by just like haranguing the other. Like there's a lot of the guy talks a lot about like, we're still in the Stone Age. In fact, he sort of has almost an incel-like energy, the sense of women only want this because that's how humanity was developed. And anyone who pretends that women want men like this are lying to themselves. And he's that type of guy where his sheer bitterness at the world is actually what has prevented him from fitting into the world. Whereas for her, it feels a little more like she would love to fit into the world. She just does not quite understand. And so she doesn't.
In your history and relationships, are you usually the one trying to fix the girl, or is it the girl trying to fix the nerd in you? Like, I can get him away from video games. Or has it been both?
It has been both, I think. It has tended to be both. It's usually less like the lifestyle of like games and stuff, and a little more like you should do more things. So it's not like I need to get you away from games or these are bad or anything, but it's more like, hey, maybe we could go outside Saturday and Sunday. So it's usually not someone trying to fix me so much as like expand my range, which I usually appreciate. Like there's a lot of things I love now that I wouldn't have picked up without a relationship where someone was like, hey, I know you want to do this, but let's do this new thing that you haven't experienced yet.
Like what?
Broadway, like even Broadway musicals. Like for a long time, I wasn't super into them. But then in my 20s, I dated someone who like really broke down how to enjoy them, what each song meant, had the rhythm of the shows. And it really made me understand it a lot better in a way where if I was just like, no, I'm in my little, this is all I want, I don't think I would have ever picked up on.
Yeah, that's good. What do you tend to try to fix?
You know what?
What's the type you attract that you think you can fix?
I tend to, when I say I tend to date messy people. I don't mean psychologically. I tend to date people who have like messy homes. And so I'm always like someone who's like, oh, maybe we should take the shoes off. Like I start to get annoying like that, or like I'll like panic clean their kitchen while they're asleep or something like that. So I'm always trying to get things to be a little more clean, but like literally in the literal sense, not trying to like fix the mess of their lives so much as being like, I think this should be in the refrigerator.
Wait, but so there is one thing that I know.
Yeah.
Is that people that are that way, their lives are messes also. Like if you go and get in somebody's car and it's a mess,
yeah,
they're usually a mess.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but I can usually accept the mess as a fun eccentricity, whereas sometimes
the dishes drive you crazy.
Yeah. But
That's
like I'm still
funny.
willing to clean it myself. It's just that drives me crazy.
So then what happens with their relationship?
I mean, it immediately falls apart when she just sort of realizes she doesn't need him. And, it is a very short book and I don't mean to spoil it, but she realizes that she doesn't actually care what other people think. That as much as everyone in her life is horrified by the fact that she works in this convenience store, the only place that she feels like she can breathe, she can be herself. She even says like outside of it, calls it almost like wearing a mask. Like the place that she feels like she understands the world is that store. And that's sort of the end of the book, is her realizing, no, I don't have to pretend to be anything. Not screw these people, but literally not caring and just sort of going back in and becoming what she really is. In a weird way, and this is going to be the weirdest comparison, it's almost like the end of the hockey movie Slapshot. And I know, because in that movie, the whole movie is about this team, if you don't know, that is like full of goons and bruisers, and they start to become popular because they're beating everyone up on the ice. And they have this coming to God moment where they're like, we can't do this. We should win the real way. We should win the way that people are supposed to win, through skill and talent. And that's not working. And at the end, they're like, I guess we just beat people up. And that's the end of the movie. But there's something fulfilling about that, where it's sort of like a character realizing who they really are after trying so hard to be someone else.
Yeah. So let me read this and then you kind of tell me what
Please.
you think. So this is page 161.
Mm-hmm.
The voice of the convenience store won't stop flowing through me. I was born to hear this voice. I realize now I went on relentlessly. More than a person, I'm a convenience store worker. Even if that means I'm abnormal and can't make a living and drop down dead, I can't escape that fact. My very cells exist for the convenience store.
Exactly. And that's so beautiful to me. It's this happiness she has, this almost religious like experience of it, where it fills her. Like it really almost has a Holy Spirit type feel to it. Like the convenience store, the sounds of it fill her heart, fill her soul.
And then it ends with a letter to the convenience store.
Yeah.
It says, Dear convenience store, I hope you don't mind me getting straight to the point. We've known each other for 17 years, but I guess this is the first time I've ever written you a letter.
Yeah.
I was 18 when we met. I thought you were really scary to begin with. You were so grown up, and I thought you wouldn't have time for the likes of me. I always felt nervous with you. I kept a notebook in my pocket to jot down detailed notes of every little gesture or habit of yours I noticed.
It's so
great. That's so great.
And the way she talks about it, both in that letter and throughout, like the moments of tenderness when she's touching something or fixing something or making something look good, is always in the store. Like when she goes to her house, she just boils a bunch of vegetables, throws something in the microwave. She talks about her apartment being full of cockroaches and being small, and how when this guy does sort of move in, he sleeps in the tub because there's not a lot of space and he doesn't like the place. But when she's at the convenience store, she is spot on and knows exactly what to do.
Yeah, it's like home.
Yeah.
It's odd, right? That's home and home isn't home.
Right. And not to do another weird comparison, but it's almost like how like Bruce Wayne isn't Bruce Wayne, he's Batman. And Batman's the real person.
Yeah. I like that. That makes sense. Any other favorite quotes from the book?
Oh man, there's me find, because there's one or two that rereading this, I was like, yes. Okay. This is sort of similar to good morning. I love this moment. It feels like morning itself is being loaded into me. The tinkle of the door chime as a customer comes in sounds like church bells to my ears. When I open the door, the brightly lit box awaits me, a dependable, normal world that keeps turning. I have faith in the world inside the light-filled box. Like just
It's so
describing
well
her
written.
heaven.
I love it.
I love this book, yeah.
Okay, so the big question, how did convenience store woman change your life?
As much as I have no similar experience to a Japanese woman working in a convenience store, it was one of the first times I've seen a main character react certain ways I've reacted. Throughout the book, she's almost confused by people being worried about her. It's not like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to do this thing. It's more like, but I don't understand why this is important to you. And that's something I've felt throughout my life when people are like, like I have no problem with kids, but when someone's like, why don't you have kids? It's crazy. I'm like, I don't have that in me. And so I don't understand how to even respond to you really. Cause it's not like a fun response. Like I just like partying. It's more like, I do not have the mechanics in me to know and explain that to you. And to see a story about someone who's under that pressure and sticks to her guns in a way that everyone else would find stupid or insane or self-defeating meant a lot to me because I saw in that character someone who was like, no, I'm going to be myself, even if it's the dumbest thing anyone thinks I could possibly do.
Yeah, I love that. I always feel that way when people ask me what I do. And I'm like, when I try to explain what I do at the end, I'm like, I should have just said I'm a plumber. Because they want you to just say what you do in one word.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not allowed to be more than one thing.
No.
And they really, when the other part of it is when they're asking you, it's more like most of the time it's just a size comparison.
Yeah.
How important are you? Like if I say I'm a doctor, I'm more important than if I say I work in a convenience store.
Yeah.
And so it's more like, where do you fall on the hierarchy? But if you can't give them like, I'm a plumber, I'm a lawyer, I'm a whatever. Yeah. They just like, they spin.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I'm a plumber. Like I'm just going to make it easy for you because that'll make you feel superior. And then we can get done with this game.
And
because I'm not one thing.
Yeah.
I'm always evolving and changing, and I do a lot of things. Like
absolutely. Also, I feel like when you do something that is kind of cool and you say it, and there's follow-up questions, there's a point where you're like, now I'm making it not sound interesting anymore. Like when I talk about being a late night writer for shows, people will be like, it must be crazy meeting a celebrity and you do this. And you're like, well, you walk in, you're professional and you talk to them and then you guys have your day. And you're like, wait, I'm making my own cool thing sound boring.
Yeah, but they're just people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
Like that's the other thing is people give this importance to celebrity and it's like,
oh yeah.
It's like they're just people. Like they have the same problems you have, and
yeah, and they're like people be like, what was it like working with them? We had a conversation and they were very professional, so it was good.
Yeah, I always feel that same thing. It's just funny how people they need it to be singular, and they need it to be easy and better if it makes them feel superior.
Absolutely,
it's funny how that works. Okay, so now let's talk about your book. So I'm curious, what is your process for writing a book? Like, what was your process for this? So the book is called Good Game, No Rematch, A Life Made of Video Games.
So this is weirdly my third book, but my first two were independent books. And one was, my first book was a sort of a scholarly book about this game called Silent Hill 2. So that was much more using sort of my grad school days of doing research and almost just writing a very long term paper. So that was a little more like a grad thesis. The second book I wrote was called Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, and that is the worst game ever made. And a company bought the IP rights to the worst game ever made, and they asked me to write a novelization of it that both made fun of it, but was also a novelization of it. Like almost like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 in book form of this game.
Did the sales for the game go up when you put the
game
book out?
hadn't been sold in like 30 years, so it technically went up just because it hadn't been on offer for a long time. But it was also the advance was $0. They were like, we don't have any money. And I was like, this just sounds fun. And so that one was the process of that one was just me watching and playing the game over and over and just taking copious notes. This one is a memoir, but it's comedy stories about my life and video games and how I've humiliated myself and how, I've tried to impress crushes or try to impress people at work and failed many times using video games. And so for me, the process was first coming up with the stories. And so like I, literally shotgunned out a big Google Doc of this little story from my life or this. Or do you remember this? Do you remember that? Do you remember, when I did, played this game with my brother or, when I dressed up as Mario to impress these girls in elementary school, which did not work. And so then I kind of did that. And then I wrote a paragraph on each one, sort of sussing out which had meat on the bones. Because, sometimes you have the funniest anecdote and then you're like, oh, this is a page and a half and it's not worth telling. So I sort of fleshed them out a little bit, took those, took the ones I really liked and put them into the pitch. Pitched it, thankfully.
What was the pitch, the short version?
Short version of the pitch was sort of not a nonfiction of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but sort of a nonfiction companion to that. A book that is also about how video games can change your life and influence the way you see the world, and in a positive, funny way.
How many times did you have to pitch it before somebody took it?
One.
Oh, come on. We need the story of how 100 people told you no.
No, like
That's too easy.
5 publishers said no and 2 publishers put in bids. So it was actually a much easier process than I thought it would be.
That's great. So then you get in advance, and how long do you have to write it?
I had a year to write it.
A year?
Yeah, so I went from actually, no, I had 6 months to write it, but then there was about a year of like the edit phase where we were like editing it and doing a legal pass. And
when do they assign you an editor?
They assigned me, the buyer of the book was the editor assigned, and then there was an editor under him that was a little more hands-on.
And so 6 months in, they start reading it and giving you notes?
That's right.
How much did they change it?
Not much at all. I mean, they were really good in that, one, both editors were fans of video games, but they weren't obsessed with them, which is almost the perfect middle ground, because they could say, I think as the layperson who gets this, you're over-explaining. Or as someone who should know this, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
Or, and just like a regular editor would, there was times when they were like, this is a story that has great jokes in it, but I think you're telling it slightly out of order. Or, the funniest part of it is sort of just left in the dust. And so I would say it was very few major changes, but a lot of little nuances that made it better. And they're also, when you're writing a comedy book that's like 85,000 words, it's so helpful to have someone say, you've told the same joke 5 times. It's very helpful to have a
Fresh
person
set
who's
of
catching
eyes.
that. Exactly.
Yeah. What is your process for writing? Like, once you had the deal, how many hours a day would you write? Any weird quirks like Aaron Sorkin that showers 11 times and puts on different clothes, or?
It was a little complicated because I was working on the Tonight Show for some of it. So I had another writing job on top of that. And I was working on a couple award shows. And so I had to balance my time between the immediate future of what I had to write versus the book deadline. And, if you spend 8 hours a day writing jokes, it's a little hard to sit down and spend a few more hours writing more jokes. So what I would really do is I had to set time aside, especially on weekends. Like, weekends were my big writing days just because those were when I had all the space.
Girlfriend or no girlfriend at the time?
Girlfriend at the time.
And she understood?
She understood.
So how many hours on the weekend? Like, did the weekend start Friday or was it Saturday, Sunday?
Like Friday, usually Friday. And I would just...
Start early?
I would usually start early. I'd try to start in the afternoon before the sun went down, because for some reason I have this psychological thing that once it's nighttime, I'm like, well, it's too late for me to work. So I'm not a morning person. It's almost like I have to find this window of time in the middle of the day to do it. But
You don't drink coffee when you write?
Oh, I absolutely drink coffee.
That late?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I drink too much coffee.
Me too, but
yeah.
I can't write without coffee in a sense.
Yeah.
But I start early. I like to start at like 4 a.m.
I would be healthier if I did that. I would be a better writer.
When you say like before the sun goes down, like 6, 7?
I would say usually something like noon or 1 p.m. to 6 or 7.
Okay, so lunch
Yeah.
lunchtime.
Yeah, like I'll
So you
usually
got a cup of coffee, you're at a desk.
yeah.
What kind of computer?
Usually I'm using a MacBook. I also have one of those free write typewriters.
The only problem with those things, I have one too, is you can't fix your mistakes.
I kind of like that at times though, just because
I get it, but it doesn't work for me.
which is fair.
I do race to get the first draft done.
Yeah.
And so for that it works, but sometimes it just gets a little like you can't tell what the word was.
I think it's helpful to me when I feel very like I can't make progress through something, because if I'm just like, I am stuck, this is a wall, I can just power through and just try to shotgun out something. And since I can't go back and read it, I know that it's not going to be as good as a draft when I'm feeling myself and I'm in my Google Docs and I'm really focusing and going back and fixing a sentence and adding something back in. But if I'm trapped, having a you have no choice but to go forward type machine is helpful. That said, I know it's like kind of a luxury I don't need.
Also, we should probably explain to people. So the free write is like a old school typewriter that just has a little screen on it. You type, you can only read a little bit of it as you go. You cannot go back and fix anything. And then it uploads to a cloud.
Yes.
In a text format or whatever.
Yeah. And the screen is e-ink on this, so it kind of looks a little nice when you're writing it. Like it looks like you're typing onto paper.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it's a little comforting.
That feeling like you're Bukowski and you're typing
exactly.
on a typewriter. Okay, so if you get stuck, like let's say it's Saturday and you're stuck, what do you do to get unstuck?
I have to do this thing, which I know this sounds silly, but I will imagine myself about to jump into like a cold pool or like a cold lake of water. A cold lake, where you're almost like, go. Like I almost have to like not pump myself up, but almost like sort of like the best I can describe it is the way you jump into a pool where you have to like psych yourself up.
So you're still sitting at the desk.
Still sitting at the desk, but it's almost
and
like
you just do this mental gymnastic where you're going to jump in the lake and you're going to freeze to death.
Exactly.
And you hyperventilate.
A little bit, yeah.
Unsticks you?
Yeah, it helps. It's like a nice little thing for me to imagine. Just like being like, I know this pool is going to be cold, but if I don't jump in the pool, I'm just going to not be in the pool.
But you're not jumping in the pool. It's all imaginary.
It's all imaginary.
Wow.
Yeah. But it helps.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other things you do to get unstuck?
Especially because I write a lot of comedy. I will go back and listen to old comedy albums that I really like, whether that be George Carlin or more modern stuff by people like Nate Bargatze. And that'll help me sometimes just because it almost like, loosens my brain a little bit where I'm like, oh, that's what funny's like. Now I remember how to write a joke.
Do you have them on vinyl?
I have some on vinyl, yeah.
What are your favorite vinyls?
Definitely the George Carlin ones. I have a Shel Silverstein one, which is really fun. And I collect a lot of video game vinyls. So I have probably 40 or 50 video game soundtracks on vinyl.
Do you listen to music when you're writing?
Yes, but I can only listen to music without lyrics. I cannot listen to any lyrics.
So what do you listen to?
Movie soundtracks, sometimes ambient stuff like Brian Eno type stuff that's a little more abstract. Unstructured. But it depends. Like if I'm writing something that's intense, I might have slightly more intense, like Inception type music. If I'm writing something that's a little sillier, I might have it a bit lighter and more background so it's not influencing my emotions. I just can't hear words because the moment I hear a word, I'm no longer paying attention to my words.
And so was it established with the publisher that it'd be 85,000 words?
They said 80 and then it sort of ballooned to 85.
That's always fascinating to me because I would find that very limiting.
It is and it isn't. It is in that, there's one or two stories that I'm like, if I had a little more space, I could fit it into the book. But there is something that's also nice to being like, I have a goal. I have a goal to hit. And also, I have a goal where I should be efficient enough to tell the stories I want to tell well within this space versus being like, I'll just keep expanding this. I'll just keep fluffing this out. Or, I don't know. I think it'll look better if this is longer. Almost like, the way a college student will half-ass an essay and be like, you know what? If I add an extra page to this, maybe they'll like it more. This made me a little more focused, which I liked.
I think like... I'm weird, but I always think like just take, for example, this book.
Yeah.
Like I get the feeling like this or my favorite books, nobody even thought about word count.
Yeah.
They just wrote the thing that needed to be written.
Yeah.
And I find word count very distracting. Like I want to make the thing good.
Yeah.
I have no concept of words.
I don't
Like when
mind it.
people ask me how many words, I'm always like, I no idea.
I'm not obsessed with words, but I don't
Well,
mind it.
publishers are obsessed with words.
They are. Yeah, they are.
They're like
They're much
40,000
more
words,
obsessed.
80,000 words,
Oh,
120,000
definitely.
is too much. Like, and you're just like, whoa, like, don't we want to make it good? Like,
But for me,
if you could do it in 40,000 words, why wouldn't you?
I agree with you, but I do like I do. There's something comforting to me where someone's like, this is sort of what we're looking for, and I'm like, you know what? I now know what you're looking for.
They have a formula. Like
Yeah.
they know what they're doing. They understand it. I guess I just don't
Yeah.
fit into the formula, or I struggle with it.
Or you've risen
I'm a little
above it.
anarchist.
You've risen up. Some of us are still in purgatory. You've risen to the kingdom of heaven.
Well, I'm the evil villain with the library, I think.
It was a compliment.
Okay, let's go through some of this.
Please.
I love. Oh, who did the cover?
I don't know, and I wish I knew because it's such a
Great.
great cover. Like the moment they showed it to me.
The thing about this sort of cover that I love is it kind of tells you everything.
Yeah.
Like and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
There's an art to that. Like it's not easy.
It's like I was so happy when they showed me this. It was almost like I think there might have been one minor change of things, and that was it. I was like, it's basically that's it. We're good.
Okay. Turns out my grandfather was the only person in that golf group who was not in the mafia.
Yep.
They just really loved hanging out with him, but didn't want him to know. My angry, loud grandfather was a hip, cool golf bro in his youth. He only figured out his friends were in the mob when one of them invited him to his house and there were multiple guards with guns.
Yep. That's true. That's back in the like the 60s when that was like Vegas.
That's fun.
Yeah, my grandparents were sort of like, by the time we were kids, they were just grandparents. But apparently in my parents' day, they were like on vacation a lot of the year and they were gone and they were like these jet setting people. I'm relatively sure they were swingers, but no one in the family wants to address that. But like they just like were these people who partied all the time and went to Vegas.
Okay. However, I made one mistake.
Yeah.
I used Punch Out as my example. I told my sister that when you punch with the power glove, it's like punching something in real life. That's definitely the way I phrased it, which was a bad idea. My sister donned the glove and then she punched me straight in the stomach with it. Hey, she said it worked.
That's very true.
It's funny that your analogies are video games. do you dream video games?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes if I'm like very into a specific story, like for me, it's almost like a book where if I'm really in depth in there and I'm thinking about it all the time, it'll pop in my dreams.
That's so fun. Okay, the problem is that as a kid, I was required to go to football and baseball games. I didn't have a choice. Get in the car or I'll give you something to cry about may have been my father's catchphrase for a couple years. He desperately wanted his kids to love watching sports, and he would work overtime to make me and my sister hate watching sports in the process. Your poor dad.
My poor dad. Because in his defense, it was never like, I want my son to play baseball and he doesn't play baseball and that makes me mad at him. It was more like, almost like video games are to me. Sports were so important to him and I just didn't click with them at all that I think he was bummed out. It was almost like, does my son not like me? Does he not like, am I doing
want to
it?
play catch?
Like, I must take him to enough football games for him to like it. Like, he really wanted to solve it. Almost like in Convenience Store Woman, again, where it's like, come on, you're a guy. You must like sports. We'll keep pushing you towards it until it clicks.
Did you ever get him into video games?
He is very into Tetris. So I actually recently set up a bunch of old Tetris games that he loved when I was a kid and made them very easy for him to play. That's like the only thing he's ever been into.
Do you consider Tetris a video game?
I consider Tetris to be one of the best video games ever made.
Really?
I think it's brilliant top to bottom. One of the creators of it said something along the lines of, when all the other games are gone, Tetris will still be around.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It might not have the best story of any game ever made.
I was going to say, what is the story?
There's none. But to its credit, it's just Tetris. It's just this perfect puzzle game made by a crazy Russian mathematician who was bored at work, and it's one of the most beautiful things ever made.
I've spent a lot of hours playing Tetris.
Yeah.
I think about that now as an adult. I understand that's why he didn't want me to know what he was talking about with those managers. He told them what had happened to his family and said, man to man, asked for a little help during a hard time. My dad had humiliated himself in front of strangers so he could afford to buy back at least one of the games that had been stolen. Even then, I recognized this. I might not have known what he was saying, but I understood what he was doing, something extremely kind.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't super close with my dad as a kid because we didn't have similar interests, but um, my sister often watched us while my parents worked late, sometimes overnight shifts. You know, again, we didn't grow up with a lot of money, so my parents had to work a lot. And one night when my sister was watching us, she, you know, almost like a movie, invited some friends over, who invited some friends over, who invited some friends over. But the problem is my parents don't have any alcohol in the house. They don't drink. They've never drank. I've never seen my mom have a drink in her life. It's not sobriety. They just don't. And all of these people came into this house, and the moment there was no beer or wine or liquor, they lost their minds and they got angry. And they literally, like, when I say robbed the place, it was almost like people were just picking things up and leaving. And, you know, you have your Super Nintendo in the living room. And so, you know, and these are teen boys, so they kind of share the same interest. So they walked off with a ton of our video games. You know, as a little kid, I was so inconsolable. And my dad, who, again, worked hard, worked late hours, and we didn't always get along. I think to him, he was like, I'm not going to let this end this way. And so he took me, and we went from like store to store to all these department stores, a lot of which are closed now, out of business. And he would talk to the manager and kind of be like, this is what happened. Is there any way we can get a discount? I'm trying to do this for my son. And I know, you know, he's a proud dude. I know that's hard for him. So as much as we've had conflicts in our life, like that memory was very important for me to write down, because it was one of the greatest moments of my childhood with my dad.
It's very, very sweet.
Thank you.
What story in here were you like, I don't know, that's too vulnerable?
You know, it was talking about my wedding, because I was married for about a year and a half, and I had a Mario themed wedding, which I do not recommend anybody does. And in the book, I recommend against it. Also, in the story, my brother gives a very great speech, which is one of the best wedding speeches I've ever heard. But, you know, I'm somebody who doesn't like speaking negatively about previous relationships or exes. You know, unless something horrible happened, I kind of just, you know, want to leave it be. So I really put in a lot of effort to write it in a way where it was about this interesting wedding, this interesting thing my brother did, but not about the marriage itself, because I didn't want to bring someone else's bad moments in their life into this as part of the comedy. So that was a really tricky line to walk, because the story is funny, but the story doesn't exist without talking about the wedding, but you can't really talk about the wedding without mentioning the fact that I'm no longer married, which I wanted to be careful about. It was one of those things where I didn't want to hurt the feelings of somebody that I haven't talked to in 10 years.
Yeah. That's a hard line to dance, but the story's still a part of it, right?
Yeah.
What page is his speech on?
His speech is on, it is the chapter, it's Never Have a Mario Themed Wedding is 193. It's about page 196 and 197.
He started, I don't know what to say really. 3 minutes till the biggest wedding of our professional lives all comes down to today. Now either you marry as a team or you're going to crumble inch by inch, play by play, till you are finished. If that sounds a little familiar, it's because that is based on the start of Al Pacino's speech in the football movie Any Given Sunday. This is a bit of a monologue where Al Pacino's character reviews how he wasted his life and ruined any chances at happiness while telling his team to focus on what's most important, winning. My brother proceeded to give that entire speech while mixing in a few elements of Friday Night Lights, the whole time replacing the words football with marriage and losing with divorce. Immediately, the table of my comedian friends at the wedding exploded. While I'm not a sports fan, they mostly were, and either way, all of us had seen this movie. That is so funny.
It was, I mean, I still have comedian friends who were there saying, like, very good comedians were like, that might have been the funniest thing I've ever seen. It was just so unexpected, and just the way he did it and the confidence in which he did it, like just giving the speech and like it's printed out on 5 pieces of paper and he's just like turning a page and still going, as you can feel most of the wedding party hating it. Like so many people who were there at the wedding where you could tell they were mad at him for doing this bit. And me and my friends were like, this is the best possible thing you could have done.
Is that true to his character?
Very true to his character. Very true to his character.
Is it lazy or is it smart?
It is a brilliant combination of the two. It is someone who can find the funniest way to do the laziest thing. But he's so good at it that he pulls it off. It's almost like a rascal quality, like a Bugs Bunny type quality.
I love that. I love this line you have in here. You say, so I moved from Seattle, the best place that I've ever lived, to San Francisco, a place that I have lived.
I liked my friends and coworkers in San Francisco. It just wasn't the city for me. I like Seattle was like all these board game shops and these nerds and these cafes and all these D&D groups I was in. And then I went to San Francisco and I was like, is every part of this town uphill? It's just a different thing, man.
It is uphill.
It's like old grandpa talk of like, I went to school in the snow uphill both ways. And I'm like, oh, that's actually possible.
It's so funny. So has there been any fun feedback on the book?
Absolutely. I mean,
any groupies?
No groupies. No groupies, but I've had a lot of like, people I don't know email me or DM me on social media and being like, I didn't grow up like this, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Or this really did describe my relationship with my dad. And it really like, I saw a scene doing it. Or like, and it sounds like I'm making this up, but I got a message from a random person who works for the government was like, I'm going through a real tough time right now with a lot of the news. This book cheered me up a lot. And I genuinely didn't expect that. Like I thought people would like it and I hope people would like it, but I didn't expect people to reach out to me and being like, this meant something to me. And because, my intention was to write a very funny book about video games. And the fact that it went a little deeper than that and has meant something to people is both surprising but super, super fulfilling.
Okay, so of everyone you've worked with, who was surprisingly good at video games?
Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon is crazy good at video games. On his show, he talks about liking games. He's very competitive. He likes to win. But part and parcel of that is that he's very good at those games. So, when he usually had like a group of people who play games, like producers he'd been working with forever. And great guys, awesome. But sometimes, one wouldn't be around. He'd be like, hey, you're the video game guy. You want to come in and play FIFA with us? And I'd be like, sports games. And then I'd do my best, though, because I really wanted to do a good job at my job. But he's so good. Just better than I've seen most celebrities. Like most celebrities, you have to pretend they're good, but he's actually good.
What's the joke that you wrote for him that you're proudest of? That landed really well.
So there was this news story, and this is years and years and years ago. There was this news story about Leonardo DiCaprio suing a magazine in France that had said he got a woman pregnant, but he did not. And he won the lawsuit. And so I was reading this news story, and what stuck out to me was that the award he was given was $9,000. And what I thought about that, I was like, $9,000 is the perfect amount of money because to most normal people, $9,000 is a life-changing amount of money. Like if they suddenly just got $9,000, so many of their problems would go away. But to a celebrity, $9,000 is nothing, especially one that's like that level of celebrity. And so I wrote this bit that was as if it was a statement by him, and Jimmy was like reading his press release, where it was like in slides, where it was like, obviously this victory is, the victory is less about just winning money and more about showing that you can't do this to people. You can't, even a celebrity, we deserve privacy and respect, and you can't make up lies about us just because that can ruin our lives, and I wish you had more respect. And then the next slide was, but also guess who got $9,000? And then it was like him listing all the things he was going to buy, like a new couch and a big screen TV, and how he was going to try to invite like girls in the neighborhood over, but wasn't sure if they'd come. And so it almost became like a teenager who got $9,000. And I was just so happy with it because it was so stupid. Like sometimes to me, my favorite comedy is the dumbest things I write.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love that. Give me your top 5 book recommendations.
Oh, that's tough. because I have so many. Let's see. Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang was actually on my list of maybe to pitch as a life-changing book before I went with Sayaka Murata's book. Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang. I'm reading this comic book now, and I swear to God, I'm loving it, but I'm going to say the word, but it's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, I believe it's called, which is almost like a mixture of Dexter and Paddington. It is an insane comic, but it's so good. I would say that. I would say I've been reading the Murderbot books because I saw the trailer for the show and I like Martha Wells, but I've never read the Murderbot books. Awesome, super funny. Let's see. I would say just because I wrote a thesis on it in grad school, The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe. I had to write an entire grad thesis on it, so I'm going to recommend it. And then I would say that's an interesting question. It's always so hard because I have so many books that I like. Oh, by Thomas Ligotti, My Work Is Not Yet Done. Thomas Ligotti is my favorite horror writer. He writes almost like, when I say nightmare, I don't mean in the sense of it's scary or it's bad, but almost like waking up in a strange situation in which you feel lost and don't know everything that's happening. And he has this amazing book that's almost My Work Is Not Yet Done, that is almost like a horror version of Severance, but came out long, long before that. So sort of set in an office, but just this sort of creeping, weird horror that just gets under your skin.
I love that. So let's say that you're stranded on a desert island and you can only take one book and one video game, because on this desert island you have electricity. What would they be?
Book-wise, you know what? I might actually take Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang, because there's so many good stories in there that I could go back to them, and they're so filled, like even though they're short, they're just filled with so much imagery and the worlds themselves feel built out that I could just let my imagination explore them. And as far as a game, probably The Sims, just so I could pretend I had a normal life. Like I could make a family, pretend I was doing okay, ignore that like I had to climb a tree to get a coconut down. I only know cartoon things. I don't know how to survive on an island.
Anybody who's trying to get into the world of video games, what advice would you give them?
I would say there are a lot of games that don't require you to have fast reaction times. There are games that you can play with a mouse. You don't need to pick up a controller. What a lot of people struggle with when they want to play games, and they haven't before, is, they see these controllers that have 16 buttons on them, and
looks like you're going to drive an F1 car.
Right, exactly. You're going to drive an F1 car, and you're supposed to be moving in a 3D space. And people just don't have the, I would say, hand vocabulary for that unless they learn it over time. But there's games like Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney is a super funny game that you play with your mouse, and you solve mysteries, and it's on every system, it's on phones, and it's something that is literally, I would say, like a visual novel, but very easy to get into. There's another one called Overboard, which is a game in which you play a woman who has thrown her husband overboard a ship, and you have to convince everyone on the ship that you did not do it. So it's basically a reverse murder mystery where you're trying to hide the murder. But again, all you're doing is choosing dialogue selections. You don't have to have a quick reaction. You don't have to, know all these combinations of buttons. It's very accessible. And I'll say there is a company called Choice of Games, and they make interactive novels, but all prose. No images, no sound or music or anything. You're just reading a novel and making choices throughout it. But the company does them so well that some of those novels they turn out heartbreaking. So if you're a big reader and you want to try a game, but you want something kind of simple that might be a combination of the two, Choice of Games has so many good options.
What are some of your favorite jokes?
Some of my favorite jokes from myself or in general?
Not yourself, others.
I have a lot of favorite Onion headlines. My favorite Onion headline of all time, and I forget who wrote it, but it was it's man who likes to move it, still searching for perfect song. Which is, again, so stupid.
So stupid, but great.
But my favorite type of joke, it's my favorite type of joke. Because you can imagine it. You can imagine this man also discovering the song and being like, oh my God, finally. Or like talking to friends and being like, yeah, I like to move it, but there's nothing for me. It hits me so hard every time. Another Onion headline is, archaeologists discover race of ancient skeleton people. And so it's just them as if they were skeletons the whole time. It's so stupid. I love stuff like that. Like stuff like that will always make me laugh.
That's funny. I love so I think my favorite joke of all time is Norm doing the moth joke.
Oh my god, the moth joke is perfect.
Just and then the punchline is like, what? Like, what? He left the light on.
He left the light on.
And he goes, I think the story behind that is they just told him going into commercial that the next guest wasn't there and he had to fill 5 minutes. And so he took this joke that literally is what, like maybe 30 seconds,
Yeah,
and strung it out for 5 minutes, and the wife and the suicide
the
and
details.
the son that's sees his father's a failure,
right, doesn't recognize his own face in the mirror anymore, and hates himself. It's so good. I love that joke.
I can watch that.
Like, I've shown people videos of that, and I'm like, I know it's a long video. Stick with me on this one.
Yeah,
and
it's
once you
so
reach that
good.
point, it's so great.
I love Norm. Then Sam Kinison did a joke about solving world hunger.
I don't know it.
So he it's so funny because like early on he was on Letterman, had him on, and so he comes out on Letterman and it's like, who's this devil or whatever,
Just screaming.
But he says it's something like he goes into this thing about the commercials where they got the little kid starving and how he hates them or whatever. He's like, you're there, the camera guy, give him a sandwich, like that thing. And then he transitions into, well, I can solve world hunger. He goes, stop sending them money. He goes, send them U-Hauls. And he goes, we have, move to where the food is. Like, we have deserts in America too. We just don't live there, assholes. And he's doing this thing with sand. He's like, it's sand. It will always be sand or whatever. It's just, I just love the flip of perspective of, no, stop sending them help.
Right.
Move their location.
Go somewhere else.
Go to where the food is.
That's and I can imagine him him screaming that too in the Sam Kinison voice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's the best. So funny. Who was the writer for Norm early on Saturday Night Live, who wrote the news? What is
Jim
it?
Downey?
Yeah, so there's a great interview with Conan and Jim Downey,
Yeah,
where Jim talks about how their whole thing when Norm was doing the news was just anarchy, and they had like a very, a very clear intention of what they were trying to do and how they did it. And I've probably watched that thing like 20 times. It's so great.
They left them alone to do their thing, and they created so much brilliance out of that.
Yeah, and then it was the undoing of Norm.
Yeah,
for that.
Who I think time has proven far righter than that decision. That decision to let Norm go has to be like one of the TV's biggest blunders.
Yeah, just crazy. One time I sat next to Dennis Miller on a flight from New York back to LA, and I was really curious about his time doing Monday Night Football, because I thought that was such a genius, him and John Gruden, and but he was telling me, so I didn't know this, but I think he was 24 when he took over the news.
God,
And Chevy Chase was the only person that had done it before.
Yeah.
And so Chevy kind of told him to do it a certain way, but he did it his own way.
Yeah.
And he kind of had the balls to like stand up. And I guess the first time he did it, Chevy Chase was back to be the host. And so, but it's so interesting how many people have sat in that chair. And do you have a favorite?
I think Norm's probably my favorite. I will say I think Seth is probably my personal favorite just because I got to write Weekend Update jokes for him. I was a freelancer for a bit, so like I'm very partial to Seth and Amy just because, they helped me break in by allowing me. So my personal pick is them. If you were like asking me as a kid, I'd be like, oh my God, Norm Macdonald. Like I would have like hit that button right away. But Seth and Amy will always have a giant place in my heart because I think without them, I might not have a career.
What are the biggest things you learned from Amy?
Lean into the silly, but lean into the silly, but don't. You can lean into the silly without the silliness itself being the main point of it. Like you can be big, but you still want a character there. Like being silly can be an aspect of a character, but it shouldn't be the only thing about them. Like her silliness, if you watch her on anything she does, it's very directed. So it seems like it's chaos. It seems like she's a very chaotic person, but she's very good at directing where that chaos is aimed. And it's a very thin line, but she walks it so well.
So would you describe that as she's controlling the attention, but taking you somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
In a sense, like the chaos is what gets you paying attention,
Exactly.
but you're not aware of where you're actually headed.
Yes, exactly.
Did I describe that right?
Yeah. It's the same as a filmmaker who might be making a movie that just seems bonkers, but then by the time you get to the end, you're like, oh, you knew where this path was going. It wasn't a mess. You actually were walking me down a path, and almost a magic trick. You've tricked me into doing this.
You know, the best definition of magic I ever heard is that it's the initial and the final solution and the casualty between.
Yeah.
In other words, like there never was a problem. The magician created the problem and solved the problem, but in the audience's perspective, this problem was there and had to be solved, and they were never aware how it would be solved. Like you saw the Duchamp collection.
Yeah.
Like Duchamp was famous for saying a quote is, "There is no solution because there's no problem."
Yeah.
That's kind of magic in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Is the magician knows that he's creating a problem and then solving it, but everything else in between is, well, look at the number and visualize it up on the wall, and you know they're putting you through the paces, but it's already solved. The problem is already solved.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And you're still surprised by it. You're still like, I can't believe you solved it. And you're like, that's what you paid for.
Yep, exactly. I think comedy is the same way. What is it like doing stand-up? Like the first time you went up there, I think there's two things in life that are the hardest.
Yeah.
Boxing.
Yeah.
And stand-up comedy, because it's just you.
Yeah.
You don't, unless you're Carrot Top and you have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's really just you and a microphone and okay, make me laugh.
Yeah.
Funny guy, like sort of thing. What was the first time you went up?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 20. I had been going to college in New York, which is really fortunate because there's 1,000 open mics everywhere. Comedy clubs have open mics, bars have open mics. So as far as a place to start, it was nice just because I had options right away to get on stage. And so I went to this place called the New York Comedy Club, which still exists. And they used to have two rooms. They had the main room, which is like your big room where you have 50 or 60 seats and a big stage. And that's where people shoot videos. And they had a closet that they converted into what they called the small room, which was probably as narrow as one of these bookshelf aisles. And they would have chairs kind of around in this weird, not semicircle, but kind of weird C shape almost, and a stage that was not much farther than I am from you. And so that's where they had the open mic. So it was me and maybe 6 other people. I had spent a month writing things down and practicing in my dorm room. And I went up there and, I didn't do well and I didn't bomb. It was more like the adrenaline rush. It was more like, kind of like what I was saying about jumping into the pool where I was like, boom. And then I did it. And then doing it, I was like, oh, I love this. But it really needed that sort of running jump into the pool for it to work. But once I did it, I was just addicted to that adrenaline. And once I got good at it, I was addicted to the mechanics of joke writing.
How long were you up there the first time?
Oh, just 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes, which felt like 20.
Do you remember any of the jokes?
I think I talked about masturbation, probably the lowest level idiot.
You were 20.
I was 20. I was, a sophomore in college. Yeah. It was not. It was relevant. It was not going to be that deep. Yeah.
Did you get any laughs?
I think I got some chuckles here or there. I didn't get any big laughs, but there also weren't a ton of people in there. And at those open mics, it's usually other people who are also on the open mic. So you have everybody's waiting for their turn, and they're also a little bit that's a new guy. I don't know him. He's not part of our friend group. And also I want to do the best. So open mics are always a little bit tough, but I don't know. There was something about it. I just got addicted after that.
What was the second time like?
I have no idea, to be honest.
You just remember the first time?
I just remember the first time.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Probably remember the last time and the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Just I think after that, I was off to the races. This is a side note, but so I did my thesis on the sorrows of young Werther. And what I did was the fan culture around it. And if I don't know if you've read it, but it's a short novel by Goethe that was massive. And it was this international sensation because for a long time, as you well know, back in the day, novels were very long. So they were very expensive to buy and they were very expensive to translate. And this novel was 100 pages and change. So it was very cheap to buy and very cheap to translate. So it became this massive international sensation around Europe to the point where in the novel's basically a teen romance about this guy who's in love with this woman, Lotta, and she's engaged to another guy who's a perfectly good dude. And it's him, the main character, trying to convince this woman to leave her fiance for him. And she's like, no, I like him. You're my best friend, but I'm never leaving this man for you. And so he kills himself. And that was the end of the book. And it actually caused a moral panic in Europe called the Werther effect, which people still use, because it was this idea that teenagers would read this and be influenced to kill themselves. So even back then, way, way back, there was this like moral panic, being like, the book ends this way, it has this content, we need to get rid of it. And what's interesting is both the fandom and the moral panic around it created this weird culture where people who didn't like the book would release bootleg copies where they changed the ending to take out that part and made it so she did marry him after all. And people who liked the book wrote bootleg copies where they extended it and almost had what you would consider these days fan fiction, where it kept going. Or, newspapers would feature poems from the perspective of the character. So it wouldn't even have the original author. Someone would submit it as if Lotte was standing over Werther's grave crying. And so to me, it was this fascinating way to bridge the gap to, remind yourself that literary culture or fan culture today is not that different than it was in like the late 1700s and the 1800s, the way people responded to things, the way that they wanted to be a part of it. There were tailors who, because this was before licensing, there were tailors who would say, this is the outfit he wore in the book. And they had no way of knowing that. But people were dumber back then. So they were like, oh, I want to dress that way. So literally people were making merchandise before merchandise was an idea. And to me, that was the most fascinating thing I could explore.
That's incredible. I'll have to read it now.
Yeah, super short, super easy.
How many books do you read in a year?
It obviously depends on the length. I would probably say 10 to 15, and then, maybe 10 to 15 graphic novels as well. But, it depends on the book and how fast I'm going and, that sort of thing.
And are you in a relationship now?
Yeah.
Married?
No.
Thinking of proposing anytime soon? Because hopefully she'll watch this.
We'll see how this book does. We'll see if I earn out on this. Yeah, if I earn out, maybe we can start talking. Even that would not make a big dent in my life.
How many books do we have to sell?
If you're listening to this and you want a possibility of that future, I need to earn out right now. I owe bad people money.
Someday you'll walk into a storage unit and she bought a bunch of books.
Honestly, that would be such an act of love.
There's this thing in kind of hard to explain, but in kind of the guru self-help world, where you'll go over to somebody's house and their garage is full of their book to chart on New York Times. Yeah. They bought a bunch of their own book. I always think it's so funny.
I always love that. I love when I hear that. And part of me, I swear, when this was coming out, part of me was like, should I do that? I was like, should I spend my own money? And I was like, no, you idiot. Don't do that.
I had one of those guys who had, I think at the time he had 6 New York Times bestsellers.
Yeah.
And I was at his house and I don't know, one of my bios said I was a best-selling author because I was #1 on Amazon in 5 different categories for a book I put out. And he goes, well, you're not a New York Times bestseller. And I was like, bro, come on, that's a curated list. It even says it's curated. Yeah. I think Amazon's the most honest. Yeah. It's just you're selling or you're not. There's no way to mouse it. And, I'm certainly not buying pallets of my book to rank on Amazon.
I mean, I have a box of 10 in my apartment and I'm like, I need to figure out how to gift these away.
It's so funny. It's great. Man, this was so fun.
Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, you got to sign mine.
Please.
Let me take my notes out of there. Yeah, could you put the evil library? How did you say it? The evil villain? I'm the villain.
There you go.
Thank you so much. I have a couple books I'm gonna show you.
Please.
Which I think are pretty funny.
I like your shoes too.
Oh, thank you.
Yellow shoe day. We really went with a good shoe theme.
Yeah, I was trying to look kind of more nerdy, scholarly for you.
Yeah, you pull it off. You pull it off better than I did.
But I wanted you to be comfortable.
Yeah, so I look like a.
Usually I wear a bow tie and a suit, but I thought. Oh, so funny.